Welcome to RESGEN's Giving Life podcast. Stories and conversations about life in Christ, everyday discipleship, and exploring ways that we as men can give life to others. My name is Tom Henderson, founder of RESGEN, and I am super excited for you to hear the conversation on today's show. Prior to diving in, though, I want to say a quick thank you to those of you who have recently left a review and rated the podcast. If you've not done that yet, man, it would mean the world to me if you would do so. Rating the podcast and leaving a review really is one of the best ways for more people to find out about the Giving Life podcast so that they too can be encouraged and impacted by the content and conversations. So thanks a ton for doing that and helping us extend the impact. Okay, let's get into today's show, where I have not only one guest joining me, but two. That's right, today I'm being joined by Tommy Woodard and Eddie James, otherwise known as the Skit Guys. Tommy and Eddie have been best friends since high school, where they were the wise guys in class who had everyone laughing and then managed to make a career out of it. A career where they have been teaching God's word all over the world using comedy and drama for over 25 years. I've been privileged to minister alongside Tommy and Eddie on several occasions, including at the RESGEN Men's Summit. And on today's podcast, we discuss so much good stuff, including how they overcome the fear of trying new things, the biggest adjustments they've had to make as they've gotten older in their career, and we even talk about the most obscure Bible story that they would one day like to do a skit about. I hope you're ready for a good time today. Here's my conversation with Tommy and Eddie, the Skit Guys. Well, Tommy and Eddie, the Skit Guys, it is good to have you on RESGEN's Giving Life podcast, my friends.
Hey, Woo-hoo! Thanks for having us.
We did it. We made this happen together. We're in 3 different parts of the world, and we're making this happen.
Fantastic. Technology is amazing.
It is. Yeah. We've learned that over and over throughout the course of this year. All the things, we were forced to learn much more about tech than we probably ever wanted to, but it's going to benefit us, I think, in a lot of ways in the long run. Okay, so I know that for most of the listeners and a lot of the guys that have been to RESGEN events, they know who you are. But there's going to be a lot of new people that are brought into the Skit Guys family because of the time that we share here together. So give us a little quick snapshot, if you will, just about you guys, and kind of who you are and what you do and all that kind of thing.
Well, it's in the name. We are guys that do skits. Yeah. It is not rocket science. We are 2 best friends from high school. We graduated like 5 years ago, right. And we get to travel around and do shows, do conferences like yours. Yeah. Go to churches, do church-wide events, and then on top of that, we have a ministry that creates short films that churches use mostly on Sunday mornings just to help a pastor get a point across.
Yeah. Okay. Now you mentioned so you've been friends since high school. And I want to know, so how did you originally meet? Was it like you were lab partners in chemistry? One of you saw someone drop their books in the hallway and you thought, I'm going to go help that guy out. How did the connection first happen back in high school?
Well, I'll let Eddie answer that, but neither one of us were smart enough to take chemistry. Okay.
Well, he would say that he stole my girlfriend in my 9th grade year. But I think if you talked with her, you found her on Facebook, she'd be like, nah, he's mistaken. He was a jerk. And, but yeah.
Not what she was saying when she kissed me. I'm just saying.
Did y'all kiss? Did y'all kiss?
It would be rude of me to kiss and tell.
But so that
means I can't tell.
Yeah.
Okay. But soon after that, we became best buds. It was really that thing of he stole my girlfriend. Then we had this play that came up. And so he didn't know anything about this, but my whole goal was, I'm going to get the lead in this play and I'm going to beat him out. He's an upperclassman. I'm going to get the lead. He stole my girl. I'm going to get the lead. I'll show him. I got the lead.
Okay.
He had no idea my bitterness and my infusion of just power that I had. But it felt good ninth grade year for
You're
sure.
like Michael. You're like Michael Jordan. You're like Michael Jordan. He used to think of like different things to fuel him to dominate on the court, and that's all you needed, Eddie. Was just that little bit of edge to get the lead.
That is what that was like me running sprints like Michael Jordan, back and forth, beating everybody, just going, I'm doing this.
Right.
Yeah, I showed him.
Okay, so
he did it.
Well, so from at that point, then, at what point did you decide that you two wanted to spend the rest of your lives together? I mean, like doing skits and stuff.
Well, it's actually a part of a court order. We don't really enjoy each other's company. Okay. That's probably mid 90s, late 90s, an incident occurred that we don't speak of. And so we're still kind of working that out.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you think about church and you think about, okay, comedy, like we were doing skits in high school. Like, he invited me to church. I said yes to Jesus. Our youth pastor said, hey, why don't you use your powers for good instead of evil, and quit making fun of me and get up here on stage and do skits. And so all the skit books in the 80s, you had to get Jesus in there really quick, or
right away,
or it wasn't deemed worthy. So a skit in the 80s would have been, hey, Joe, you look really sad. Are you okay today? And then,
oh, sorry, you need Jesus.
Okay. I mean, that would be a skit. And so we in high school were like, well, those are cheesy. Those are dumb. So we started stealing stuff from Saturday Night Live and trying to make it Christian, which is very hard to do, but
very difficult to do.
We were up for the task, but so we've kind of seen this whole thing go from nobody laughs in church to where, oh, wow, this is really cool. 30 years later, people are laughing in church. People are enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
And you can still put in scripture. So, this was never a thing that was supposed to happen. Answer your question.
Yeah.
This was a side thing. This was hey, do you want to go do this? And it just kept turning into things. Tommy and I, we have never sent out a piece of publicity on ourselves. There's never been a thing that's gone to a church that has said, book Tommy and Eddie, the Skit Guys, for your next event. It has always been word of mouth since like 1997. And that's the way it will be until God says, hand me the ball, boys, you guys are done. So it's a huge blessing to get to do what we get to do. We've never set out to do it. We're not entitled to do it.
Yeah.
It has just been one foot in front of another until God says, you guys are done. I've used you guys.
Yep.
That's so it all started from youth group sketches that you did together, which I think is one of the reasons why, when we've done stuff together, we've gotten along so well, because, I got my start in ministry doing skits in youth group back in, from 86 to 94. Obviously wasn't as good at it because I wasn't able to make a career out of it. But yeah, we used to do sketches with like Wayne's World. Me and a buddy, we had one that's called the Love Brothers. It was about two dudes that really struggled in like getting girlfriends that we found. That was a true life story though, actually. That was really just about us. But at any rate,
that's fantastic.
So I did not realize that it actually and it was really the encouragement, because I was going to ask you, so what was some of those people in your life that really gave you the encouragement and the confidence to do what you did? But it sounds like I'm sure there's others, but it started with your youth pastor.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Eddie's senior year in high school, actually my freshman year in college, our youth pastor asked us to do skits on every Wednesday night. And, he would hold our feet to the fire, and Eddie and I both were flaky, and, we'd be there, we wouldn't be there. But yeah, he just, and the sad thing was, like, well, he wouldn't know what he was going to talk about until about 5 p.m. on Wednesday nights.
Sure.
And so then he'd say, hey, here's what it is, And so we would make up skits, and, that poor guy, our skits would go 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and we'd butcher the Bible because neither one of us really knew it.
Yeah.
And so he'd get up, and while he had a whole message planned, he'd have to spend the rest of the time explaining, okay, that's not right. The ark that Moses had was not the ark that Noah had, and try to fix it all.
And Indiana Jones's arc had nothing to do with the Bible.
So confusing.
Like
yeah, and so there's a lot. It's a confusing time. So I think that is an important distinguishment that had to be made at that time, especially. So that's good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you've been doing this a long time, and you mentioned that it's when God says, "Okay, we want the ball back." I want the ball back. You guys are done. But what has kept you guys in the game so long? Because you haven't gotten bored of it. You're still very effective. So what's really like continued to be the focus that's allowed you to stay in the game so long?
I think Luke 12:48, too much is given, much is expected, or the Spider-Man movies say, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there's this thing of, this was never supposed to happen. There aren't a lot of skit groups. I mean, we could Google them right now in the country. There's not a lot of skit groups that get to do what Tommy and I get to do on the level that we get to do it. So I go, there's an enormous responsibility that I do feel like, until God says, in Acts 13:31, King David used his purpose for his generation, and then he died. I don't know how many generations we've gotten to use our purpose for, but until God says you're done or you die, I really do feel like God hasn't released us. I'm always blown away, but like even back in the 90s, when it was like, hey, I think it would be great if Tommy and I got to do as many conferences as we could as the Skit Guys. I'm telling you this, people would look at you like, well, that's cute with your little skits. That's cute. And I started getting very comfortable with the idea, oh, no one believes this can happen. Like, this is audaciousness. And then it would be, it would be great to have a store that people could get videos for churches and scripts that they could use in their church. And it was the same look, because back then churches weren't using videos. And then but it was the same look. So I think over the decades, I've gotten really comfortable with the audaciousness of the look, to go, okay, we must be onto something here, because that's the look. People think we're crazy. This shouldn't work. And even when, we've just finished a movie, a major motion picture, and it was the same thing 5 years ago. If Tommy and I could do a movie, maybe one of the first comedies in faith-based film, that would be great. And there was the look. And so I think for me personally, if you can get that look, if you can get that audacious look from people because your dream is so big and this shouldn't work, then I think you're still onto something. You're still relevant. And so I crave that look, because then I go, okay, this may take 5 years, but we're onto something.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Eddie just said. I think also, like, we didn't it's not like a friendship formed because we had a ministry and a job. Like, there was a friendship where if you were to look at my senior yearbook, you would see that Eddie signed it in probably a dozen different places. And each one of those signatures is from a different character, because in high school, we'd be on a bus going somewhere and we'd entertain the people on the bus. Yeah. And so it's ingrained in our friendship that we get together and have a good time. And now we bear a responsibility that it's not just a good time, but that's a good time that hopefully encourages people, shares the truth of God's word with them. And so, we don't keep doing it because we have to. Like, we keep doing it because we get to.
Yeah.
It's a get to.
Yeah. And you're effective. And obviously you would not have the longevity, you would not have the ability to continue to keep doing it if you weren't having an impact. And that's one of the things that I think that I've appreciated just from even when I was a youth pastor, when I first started, and utilizing some of your materials from the early, from the early years, and just the longevity that you've proven that there is purpose behind it all. And it is one, like you already spoke about it, is saying that, we really can have a good time as followers of Christ. We really can laugh and enjoy being together and all that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be serious all the time. But then there is a time where it's like, okay, but that humor and that comedy really can lead to an openness to receive the truth in a different way and allow that truth to impact our lives. So I'm interested in asking the question, how have you found that balance of humor and then talking, or leading to the point of where you can really talk about some serious stuff or deal with some serious stuff? Like, for instance, doing a sketch on temptation, and a temptation of pornography or whatever the temptation is. And utilizing humor to get to that truth, but not in a way that trivializes it or that makes light of it, but shows that no, we really do want to have the Spirit convict, so that then we can move on and create spiritual health. That's a kind of a long question, I realize, but how have you found that balance? How have you figured that out over the years?
Yeah, I think the first part of the balance for me, and I think for Ed, is it's not a spiritual place. We grew up watching John Hughes movies, and if you watch a John Hughes movie, you see laugh, 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 dip, laugh. Like, that's almost in all of his movies. I mean, I remember, Home Alone, like laugh, 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 laugh. And all of a sudden, this old man and his son are reunited. And I'm sitting there watching it and tears just rolling down my face. I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming, you know? And so he was the one that was so great at doing, humor to break you down, and then you slip in a little something right there. And so I think we took that same concept. We like to say humor breaks down walls for truth to enter. And so it was the deal of going, if you can make somebody laugh, they'll listen to you. Yeah. And so I think that's when you talk about how do you do that, that's kind of the secret sauce. Ed, what would you add to that?
Tommy always says, we are pastors more than pranksters. And I think there's a huge responsibility. I'll go back to the word responsibility in the comedy. It's always funny to me, like when we go do a show somewhere live and say, "Hey, want to welcome these comedians, those Skit Guys." Like, we're not comedians. No. It's a great, I guess, perceptual, platitude, so to speak. But we're pastors. We're licensed, ordained pastors. If we weren't doing what we're doing, we would. Tommy is a teaching pastor at his church. I get the noble beauty to help my pastor on a weekly basis with the sermon and with what we're doing in our worship services. I think that burden bears the responsibility to, there's got to be that nugget. We just got to do it in a way to where it doesn't feel like we're shoving something down their throat or a Sunday school lesson. And to me, that's the beauty of what we get to do. We also, being in the church, you get to hear the stories. You get to hear the stories of hurts and the habits and the hangups, the pain, just the tremendous pain. And I think those stories become our skits. They become the real life thing, to where it really isn't us trying to write something. It's like, hey, I talked to Judy, or I talked to Stephanie, or I talked to Joe, or whoever. And you get permission to use their pain, and you dip that into something, and that becomes your real life moment. Yeah. And it works because you can't make it up. It's real life.
Yeah. And it connects, and it connects to so many other people. And then even knowing that, wow, that the valleys that this person went through, that they now and can be influential and help impact other people's lives because of the work that God's done in their life. And so I love that. So, with the length of time that you've been able to do this, you did a lot of youth ministry at the front end. I mean, it's probably like a vast majority of it was youth ministry. And yet you're still able to be very effective in that space, but you've also broadened your platform to so much more, to include videos, to include the new movie coming out, which we definitely want to talk about a little later as well. But then also really doing a lot more in like you came to the Men's Summit, date night comedy, investing in marriages, all of that kind of thing. So was that just, again, God opening those doors? Was it, boy, I really feel like I'd like to get more into, more speaking and doing events like for adults? How did all that kind of take place?
When Zondervan, we got to do like a 7 DVD set for youth ministers, to where it was called, what was it called? You Teach. Was it called You Teach?
It's called You Teach, yeah.
And they basically had all your sermons plus a video that a youth minister could use for their youth group. And there was a set of 7 of them. And I think before we signed the deal, it was, can we make the 7th one and we called it Big Church video. Can we make a big church video? And it really was that thing of, so you had 6 youth group videos plus a big church video. And we tried very, very, very hard to go, if a youth minister would take the chance and give this to the pastor or the creative arts director and go, hey, this is a really good video. This could work in big church. And it was short. All those youth group videos were long, 8.5 minutes, because a youth minister could throw that in there. And they knew that they had an hour. The student band gets up there to sing. There's going to be a testimony. There's going to be a game. The youth minister is going to speak for 30 minutes. And you know what? 8-minute video, that'll work. That'll give
be
the
helpful.
band to get off timeout, get off stage, or clear up the whipped cream off the stage. But that big church video was 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, because the pastor isn't going to want to give up his sermon. The music minister isn't going to want to give up a song. I mean, it had to be quick. It had to be fast. And so there really was a very intentional purpose to go, let's just see. And I think that opened up a lot of doors at the front end. And then we kind of hit that sweet spot of churches using videos. And it really was, well, we're already doing youth group videos. Let's just concentrate on holidays, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day. And we really started doing that and really thinking, would a pastor buy this? And would the old people in the front row be okay with everything that we're saying? Because the pastor ain't going to use it if those old folks don't like it. And so it really was just this continual seesaw of youth group, big church, youth group, big church. And so we just kept trying it.
Yeah, and tailoring the content to the audience that that you were going to be doing the ministry for, and understanding, I think, the role of the pastor in that, the role of the ministry leader. And I think you having a pastor's heart and being pastors yourselves, you understand that. And that was one of the greatest things this last time that we were able to do some stuff together. We had a little extra time, and so we were able to go and have some breakfast together at one of my favorite breakfast spots here in Sioux Falls, and
it was good too.
It was good. It was good. Yeah. And then we had to go work out afterwards because we ate so much. But so we earned it. But was hearing just the heart that you really do have just for people, and that it's not performance. It's the heart of God through your performance because of your passion for people. And I think that, when you talk about, I already asked the question about staying in the game so long. One of the things and this is just kudos to you guys, of just because your passion and your motivation has always been pure and it has been right. I'm sure you have people in your corner that make sure that it is pure and that you challenge one another in to make sure that it's not about our performance. It's about you being used for the Lord and what is He doing? What does He want us to do? How's He directing our steps? So I just appreciate that about you guys, and I just want listeners and viewers to know that every interaction I've ever had with you guys has been 100% the real deal. So thanks for that. Yeah, but now that was a kind of a serious moment. So I want to take it the other direction though. See, we're going to take people on those cliffs, laugh deep. Now we're going to laugh again. But I'm listening. I'm learning. That's what I'm doing today. I want to know an obscure Bible story Okay, an obscure Bible story that one day you'd like to do a skit on, but you just haven't quite yet, figured out how to do it. Like I'm thinking there's always those stories that you read that you're kind of like, really? That's in the Bible? Like I'm thinking of like, 1 Samuel 18, where David goes out and he kills like 200 Philistines and brings back 200 Philistine foreskins and counts them out in front of what he's going to be his future father-in-law and says, hey, here's what I present to you. May I have your daughter's hand in marriage? I think, man, you know what? I took my father-in-law out to TGI Fridays and got him some wings and said, hey, can I, but it's like stories like that. So is there an obscure Bible story that you say, ooh, this would be a good skit? And maybe this could be the birth of something very special, by the way. Maybe this could launch you into a whole new creative space.
Well, I will tell you this. We actually have one that, is I think is a fantastic story. It's the story of, Ehud, the left-handed man. And I mean, that whole thing is just written for middle schoolers, because you've got King Eglon, who is obese. I mean, he's just giant, right?
And the Bible says he's a very large man. The Bible says it.
Yeah, it's not PC at all. And, and the fact that, you have the story and, that Ehud stabs him and the fat goes over the sword, so Ehud has to like pull his hand out and leave the sword. I mean, the fact that when the guys that are attending attending King Eglon don't come in because they think he's relieving himself. They think he's going to the bathroom. So we've actually done that many times on stage. So there's not a lot of stories that you read that you go not going there.
Yeah.
I will occasionally, when somebody asks for, when people are nice enough to say, hey, will you sign this? I sometimes will write Isaiah 36:12 as a reference, because, and then if you go back and read it, it says, was I not sent to you, but also to the men who sit up on the wall and eat their own dung and drink their own urine. I don't know that we could make that into a skit. That'd be a challenge.
I'm just thinking of the props that would be necessary.
Brownies and lemonade, you're good.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. Eddie, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that at all before?
I would love to figure out one day how to do, was Elijah, who, go up you bald head.
Yes.
And and then the teenagers are basically taunting him, and he puts a curse on them, and they all get eaten up by a bear. Just massacred by a bear. Yeah. If you can figure out the tangibles, I think every parent would you'd get a standing ovation if you could just figure out how to tell that story in such a way that's like, oh, thank you. Oh, yes, thank you. Redemption, thank you.
Maybe you could work with Fallon and get that dancing panda to come out at that specific time or whatever. I mean, look, we talk about dreaming. I mean, let's just dream big. I mean, let's dream big. Okay,
that's audacious. That's good.
All right. So, the thing I love about what you just said, Tommy, too, was that there's really not much that you're unwilling to try or trying to figure out. And so whenever we try new things, sometimes there can be some fear that creeps in, or whether that be fear of failure, fear of, man, is this going to work? How's this going to make me look? All that. And I think regardless of the profession that we have, there are things that we're trying to enter into new territory where fear can reside of something. So how have you guys, as you've entered into new territory, how have you overcome the fear of trying new things or implementing new ideas? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, I don't know if you could see this. Like, okay, so that right there is that's a grease board or a glass board, whatever you want to call it. And up top it says top 20 for 2020. So in January, I mean, those are my goals in all areas of my life: Skit Guys, kids, personal, dreams, all of it. And that board, there's not a lot of things that got crossed off that board because of 2020 and the way it's worked out. one thing that I have been talking to Tommy for about 4 years now is, as comedians they go into nightclubs at 2 a.m. or whatever, and they work on new stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a safety there, but there's also, it's a 2 a.m. crowd. So can you get them to laugh? Yeah. Like there's a hustle and bustle there that Tommy and I don't have. We don't have a regular thing that we can go to and try out new things. Hey, we want to try this out for you. And when you've been doing it for as long as we've been doing it, you see this in comedy TV shows. What made them great is what you started expecting every Wednesday night at 7:30, right? Mm-hmm. You TiVo it, you tape it, you watch it, you sit around because they are amazing. They are great. They've never said it like this before. We love this TV show. You start doing that year 8, year 9, you know exactly what happens minute 17, minute 18, it becomes rote. Like I remember having The Big Bang Theory on my DVR towards the end and never watching them. But I felt like they were friends, but I would never watch the season. They would just collect, and then I would delete them all, not watching any of those seasons because I kind of felt like I knew what was about to happen. The same thing with Tommy and I. There's not that outlet to create new stuff. And so for 4 years, going back to this board, it has been Tommy and Eddie find a way to create new stuff, because that is the regeneration of who you are. And then COVID hit and we started, it was not by purpose or intention, but we started trying to think of, well, what can we do during this time when everybody's home to give people hope? Mm-hmm. And we started doing this thing called bedtime Bible stories. It was really just to bring hope to people. Or if 12 people watched it, great. It was something that we could do. It was a possible. And if God wanted to do the impossible, great. Well, we started doing that, and Kayla picked it up. And before we knew it, we were doing 5 nights a week, and Tommy and Eddie were improving, and we were creating new characters, and we were digging into Bible stories. And there was a whole generation that didn't even know who we were. Little kids, little 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 7-year-olds coming to appointment television on their phones or iPads, watching bedtime Bible stories. And that goal that I had for 4 years, thinking we have to have a comedy club, we got a comedy club during COVID, and we were creating new characters and new ways to say things, and people all over the world were watching it. And I go, that was just a great gift. Mm-hmm. All that to say, you got to keep it in front of you. You got to keep those, even if it doesn't seem like it's germinating, you got to keep it in front of you. And then God seems to go, bloop, here we go. It's now time to work on this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Well, and the thing is that sometimes you just got to do it. You step into it. You just say, okay, look, the circumstances that we're in sometimes as well, just say, we don't have a choice. Like you had this season that no one wished for, not happened, right? That maybe would have still remained on your whiteboard. Your calendar's been full, and you're going from show to show to show, and this recording, movie stuff, blah, blah, blah. But then you didn't have that creative space, but this all of a sudden gave you that creative space. And so you said, okay, now's the time. Now's the time to step in. And I think there's those seasons in our lives where we have to just really listen for those. And then we got to fight the fear of what if this doesn't work? This podcast is a great example of that. Like, this was something that I always wanted to do, didn't have time for it. And we said, okay, boom, let's get this thing, because now this can continue to hopefully speak in the lives of all these things that I speak at and the events, and having guys like you that join me for conversation that can continue to encourage guys as well.
Yep. You're exactly right. And even like you as a sponsor that brought us in, there isn't freedom because you're expecting the best stuff from the Skit Guys. There isn't freedom to try out new stuff. And so there's an expectation that it even come with, got to give them the goods, got to give them the best. There is no time to play or to improv or try out something new. It is, you're brought in to be the best. And so to figure out that playground is huge, to keep regenerating, keep trying to figure out new things.
Yeah.
I think too, Eddie often quotes, I think it's Emerson, do the thing you fear and the death of fear is sure. So even prior to, 2020, we were getting to the place where, hey, are we still funny? Are we still relevant? Like all of those things. I mean, those are fears that, unless you're superhuman, you're going to have those concerns. And so, part of dealing with fear is not only dreaming, but just getting up there, whether it's no matter what your job is or what the situation is, like continuing to do, even if you're afraid, gosh, I don't know if this is going to work. You get out there and do it. And then lo and behold, it works, or it doesn't. And then you got to figure something else out,
right.
But don't give up because you're afraid, I mean, look it in the eye and keep doing it.
Yeah.
Good word.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that there was seasons or shows where you got off the stage and you're like, wow, that skit didn't land well tonight, or boy, we messed up. I mean, I'm sure there's been a handful of times in your career where you've missed lines. You've done things that are very, they don't happen a lot. And there's times where you can be like, geez, what in the world was that? But it's saying, well, you know what? We are human. There's grace for that. And we move forward. So
yeah. And listen, that has happened to us. Also, we've gotten off stage and gone, wow, that was horrible. Oh my goodness. We should probably give them their check back, and lo and behold, they'll come out and go, man, fantastic. Great job. Oh, you guys crushed it, and they're genuine, So a lot of times the fears that we have in life are our perception of things rather than the reality of what's going on.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, so a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up our time here together. But I got to imagine that over the years of traveling, and I know that COVID has been difficult. We were talking prior to starting the podcast about how you're used to spending so much time together, and that you truly are best friends. You enjoy spending time together. You don't live near each other, so a lot of times when you're together, it's because you're doing ministry together, which is super fun and all of that. But I got to imagine over the last 20 some years, almost 25 years now of doing this, there have been instances where, just like in any relationship, there's been some in my marriage, we don't fight in our home. We call it intense fellowship. Okay. That's what we call it. And so where there's maybe been some intense fellowship with you guys, where you've just had to work through some things. You've had to work through some challenges. But yet you've come out on the other side of those things with a stronger relationship, a stronger understanding of who each other is, and a stronger partnership in accomplishing the mission together. How have you dealt with some of the challenges? And because I got to imagine that, again, we have listeners, we have viewers that they've had business partnerships that have dissolved. They've had seasons in their marriage that have been difficult. And sometimes it's hard to see beyond the struggle. And so how have you had in those seasons that maybe you didn't see eye to eye on a certain thing, where you had to work at it a little bit more? What were some of the things that maybe that have been helpful to you?
Man, that's a big question. I don't really think there's one answer. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think we have working in our favor. Eddie has a list of goals and dreams, and I have fidget spinners, that's, so, I mean, but one of the things is not just acknowledging, but respecting how different you're made. I mean, there was a time when we thought we were the same person, and that was a great struggle, because if you think you're the same person as someone else, it just breeds competition, because who can be the better at being that person. And I think when Eddie and I realized that as much as we have in common, we approach life differently, we see things differently. That was a real freedom, and I remember, I mean, I joke about the fidget spinner, but like we had long conversations of, him asking me why I don't have any goals, And me go, I don't know. That's just who I am, and I respect and love his goals. They have helped better my life, and better my ministry. And so I think one of the things, and Eddie, I'll let you speak to other things too, because there's a lot of them, but it's just acknowledging each other's differences and celebrating it, and realizing that, that they work together, that God's using our differences to better both of us.
Yeah, I would encourage, I mean, that's huge. I don't know, if you are in a business relationship or a partnership, I would encourage anybody that you're either a dynamic duo or there's four of you and you all have a mission to go do something. Like this is a picture on my desk, and that is us from high school, full heads of hair, doing that's one of our first promo shots where you had to dress up to go to church and do skits. Yeah. But I would encourage every business relationship, take a picture of each other and put it somewhere, because at the end of the day, you're honoring God and you're honoring this commitment that you've made with this other person to go, we're going to give it all we've got. You will never find us talk bad about each other.
Yeah.
You will never find us stab each other in the back. You will never see us leave a man behind. You will never see one of us in a crowd walk off and the other one's just standing there talking with 7 different people. I mean, that makes some late nights. That makes some exhausting times. And I could be wrong. But Tommy and I, with all the fun and all the laughter we have, we also sit down and in business, they call it put the crud on the table. I think they use other words for crud. But
poop.
There is something to that, to go, okay, here's the poop emoji, and we're going to set this down here, and we're going to get into this a little bit, and we're going to talk about the hard stuff, because the tunnel of chaos does lead you to the tunnel of love, and that love relationship makes everything great. So you got to go through the tunnel of chaos. You have to figure out each other's differences and look at it not as an extreme, but this yin and yang works. This is how God put us together. So let's figure out how to make this great.
Yeah. You there is not an example. I don't think in our entire relationship, there's not an example of either one of us even playing a joke on the other guy. And there's an intention to that, because jokes are fine, but we want to make sure that each other knows I've always got your back. And so if somebody were to come to me and do something and try to blame Eddie for it, I would know that's not true. And vice versa, because we've always got each other back, to the point that, hey, we may together play a joke on somebody else.
Yeah.
But we're not going to play the joke on each other, because this relationship is of utmost importance. And so we guard it with everything that we have.
Yeah.
I can remember one of our first gigs when we were doing, right out of high school. I may have been a senior in high school. It was gas money and a chicken dinner. And then there was this one gig where we each got $100 each, plus gas money and a chicken dinner. Right. And I remember in the car going, what are you going to do with your $100? What CDs are you going to buy? And I remember Tommy going, well, I'm going to tithe. I'm going to tithe first, and then I'll figure out the rest. And I remember sitting in the passenger seat going, what? What? You did what? Yeah, I'm going to tithe. And I'm like, well, you tithe off your job. This is what we get.
Yeah.
And I remember being really astounded by that. But if you that conversation in a truck from 1987 or 88 to 2020, we still talk about money. We still talk about how we give it away. We still talk about how do we take care of our people. We still all of those conversations are still a part of our tapestry of how to honor one another. He spurred me on that day to make me better. He spurred me on to go, well, I guess I got to give $10 too. Dadgummit, I don't want to. That's a CD.
Yeah.
So, but that's spurring each other on, Proverbs, iron sharpens iron. So one friend sharpens another. We stab each other in the front instead of the back. Like all those things still take precedent today.
Yeah, it still happens today. And it's not the expectation. There's never a concept of either one of us going, I need to teach this guy how to do this,
No.
Yeah.
In that car back then, it wasn't me going, I'll show Eddie how to tie. It was me going, no, here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And, I would say that, I think I told you this the other day, Eddie, like Eddie is so great. He's such a kind person. And we'll be traveling somewhere and there'll be somebody struggling with their bags and I'll see them and I'm just not one to interject in somebody else's life. You know, I'll think to myself, oh, that's a bummer. Well, Eddie is someone who initially will be like, hey, can I help you with that? And he didn't, he doesn't, there's nothing in his brain going, I hope Tommy sees this because he's a jerk, but I watch and go, oh, and that's rubbed off on me. It's made me more of a person that now when I see people, strangers or whatever, how can I inject and stop? And, I was driving yesterday to church in a snowstorm and somebody was on the side of the road and I'm running late for church, but I still rolled down my window and was like, hey, do you need some help? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, too bad. And I drove to church, they said they were fine, but I know that back in my mind, it's the example that was set by Eddie. So it really is iron sharpening iron.
Yeah. There's so much good in what you're talking about there. And even at the front end of the conversation that about in dealing with those challenges is, deep level commitment and a high level of communication that you've had from the start, that you've established that, and then just that continual recognizing of, hey, we do have different gifts, we are and different strengths, different weaknesses, and then God allows those to complement one another, and that's what you were just speaking to at the end there. So, okay, a couple more things, and then we'll wrap up. The Chisel has been probably one of your largest skits that you've ever done, and with the highest level. Why is that skit that you've probably performed thousands of times? There's a book based on it. Why has that impacted so many lives?
I think that skit is a gift from God, and it was given to Eddie, and he has been very generous with it. And I don't know how all of that works, but I would say that.
Yeah, the beauty of the silence is we truly don't know. I mean, it's there was a Pepperdine college professor that came up to us during the show and said, he was the speaker, and he goes, "Hey, I love you guys. I show the Chisel skit every fall semester. It is the equivalent of a Christian love song. What you all have done in skit form is the equivalent of." He I don't know what Christian song, some hymn he gave, but I mean, it was high praise. And
it was Amazing Grace.
It was an Amazing Grace. I just, all I know is that the pastor was talking about Ephesians 2:10, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. I had to come up with a skit that Saturday afternoon so we could perform it. It wasn't Tommy, it was a girl. And it was, and I had nothing. And I think that's the beauty to answer your question. I had nothing, but I knew at 6:00 I had to have something. And I'm in my garage. I don't have anything. And I'm meeting her at noon. We're going to figure it out in 6 hours. We're going to throw something against the wall at 6:00 Saturday night. And I see that hammer and chisel and I throw it in the car. Go, maybe, might as well put it there, maybe. And the more we kept talking about what it looks like to be fearfully and wonderfully made, it was, well, hey, I got a hammer and chisel in my car. What if God is chiseling things out of a woman? What if those things come to pass? And Tommy pulls out a letter that he had since college. That afternoon, she pulled out a snowflake, that we are all an original. There's no snowflake that is the same. and Tommy pulling out a snowflake would be weird. So it has morphed and it has changed. But I think what's so beautiful that you heard the silence there is neither one of us can claim propriety to this skit.
Yeah.
And what's so amazing was I can remember I was at a big church. I can remember doing it at 6:00 Saturday night. And you have something when you hear the and it's this guttural, like when you hear a unison it's the barbaric from an audience. You just know you're onto something. And I remember being 27 years old and I heard that maybe for the first time. And I cannot tell you how many people came up to me going, that's Skit, that's Skit, that's Skit. And still to this day on our store, it's still the mostly bought from individuals. It's the most talked about. It's the most downloaded. And we can't take credit for any of it. It's just a God thing. It's just a God thing.
We threw that skit away. We were doing we did a 7 DVD deal with Zondervan, and each DVD had to have like 7 videos, and we had done God's Chisel live a handful of, maybe a dozen times at the most, and it was nothing. Like nobody, when we finished a show, nobody came up and was like, oh, that last skit. It was like, gosh, this just isn't hitting. And so we thought, well, we're not going to do this skit anymore. So we'll put it on this video. And that was probably 2005, maybe 2000, somewhere around there. And, we put it on there. A lady ripped it off the DVD and put it on YouTube illegally. And it went viral. And, it was a really funny thing because the folks at Zondervan, this was the beginning of, viral videos and all of that. Nobody really knew how to navigate those waters. And they said, do you want to tell her to take it down, or do you want us to tell her to take it down? And fortunately, for some reason, we were smart enough to say, no, leave it up. Yeah. And, God took it, and the emails, the stories, they are paramount. Like it is the stories of literally a guy saying, my wife and I got divorced. I came across this video online. God used it to break my heart. I shared it with my ex-wife. It broke her heart. We got remarried. I own a store now, an appliance store or a hardware store. And, and when people come in my store, I say, do you have 11 minutes? Because that's how long the video is, and he shows it to people that come in. And so, if anything, I don't want to overstate it, but if anything, I think we've just been made caretakers of a gift of God. Nobody would say that the shepherds created a great story. They were just caretakers of a message that they were given. And so I think we're just the lowly shepherds that get to take care of this this ministry.
Yeah, and it is such a powerful sketch because it applies to every one of our lives. And we had you do it at the men's summit last year, and here in 1,000 men, pin drop, just saying, wow, for men to look at themselves as a masterpiece, because men, I think sometimes we just beat ourselves up, and like, I don't measure up, I'm not enough. I'm not as good of a dad as I should be. I'm not as good of a husband. I'm not as good of a man I should be, a Christian, all those things. We create these standards that we can never meet. There are these standards that we put in our own lives that we could never meet. And just knowing that God looks at us and just sees this beautiful creation, which a lot of times as dudes, we don't want to be called a beautiful creation, man, but that's what we are. And that's what God created us to be. And he's continually just working on us. And it's just our job to make ourselves available and be in the hands of the artist so he can continue to work in our lives. So powerful. Last question, then I want you to talk just about how people can connect with you. I'm just interested, what has been some of the best advice you've been given as a husband and as a dad? We have so many guys that are listening to this, and we always have one or two nuggets that that we receive along the way in the journey from sometimes people that that we wouldn't have expected from. But what's some of the best, like one thing that the best husband advice, best dad advice you've received?
I'm going to go first because Eddie he just reads and grows and betters himself as a husband and a dad. And I'm just like, not that. So I know he's going to share something fantastic.
I don't know I am.
He is. It's going to be amazing. I don't like, I will say this. Nobody told me this. This is just something that I've done. And just so you can get the context, my son is 19, my daughter's 23. So I have now adult kids. One of the things that I did started with my daughter, and then I did the same thing with my son, was I told them, I said, I will never make jokes with you about who you're dating, or if you like someone. And I said, I can't speak for your grandpa or your cousins or your uncles. Like I can't, but I will never, ever make light of that. And I don't know what prompted me to tell my kids that, because it's a great challenge, because that is easy. That is low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
those
totally.
jokes, But I will tell you this, my 23-year-old daughter, just this past week, we sat down and had just a really great conversation about a guy that she's been dating. And both of my kids have been very open about all of their relationships. I think it's because it created a safe space. And so while the easy dad move is to make the jokes, like, I guess I would encourage all dads, like, take those things, let your kids know it's safe, so that you're the safe person that they can come talk to about things.
I love
That's good,
that.
Tommy.
And I followed that. I have two daughters, 16 and 14, and I took that advice that Tommy said right there. I've never made fun of their boyfriends. I've never joked. And there is some beauty in that pavement that goes a long, long way, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't joke about their boyfriends with your best buddy when you're traveling.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. Yeah. Or when they break up with them.
That's right. That's true.
He wasn't that great, right? You know that, right?
Wasn't he?
Yeah. He was kind of a dweeb. You know that, right? I have, since my girls were little, and they're teenagers now. So, I mean, I'm in a world of just, angst and estrogen. Yes. I have taken my daughters, and I would say, no matter who's listening to this, to go, oh, well, I'm too late. My girls are, this age and this age. But since they were little girls, I've taken them on daddy-daughter dates once a month. And I can say that I've been pretty, if I didn't do it, like I did it every month, every year. But if I would look down the scope and go, this month is really busy, I would do a double daddy-daughter date. But that happened once a month. If I'm too busy for my girls, and I'm too busy, like, bottom line, that investment has paid off huge to when they don't really want to be around me now. And I say that with all, I don't think there's any, I'm a codependent. So the hardest part is for me has been to read their faces and to go, what did I do wrong? What is happening here? What is wrong with me? Or even to put it back on them and feeling angry because we're not doing what we used to do together when they were little. But those daddy-daughter dates have probably paved some huge credits in the bank to when there isn't a lot of talking, to when they do want to be with their friends more. Because there does seem like there are times that we have made Sunday nights family night. That usually was a date night for me and my wife, because I wanted my daughters to see, hey, mom and I are going out, and it was always Sunday night. We've reversed it because even during COVID, it seems like we're all just so displaced that Sunday nights have now become family night, and we'll just sit there. Sometimes there's not a lot going on, but it's interesting once the wheels start getting going they start talking, and we just need to sit for a little bit. But I think those daddy-daughter dates have paid off to where when we do sit, it's like old water pump.
Yeah.
The water's down there deep. I just got to keep priming, and before we know it, there's water coming out of that well.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that.
Yeah. No, that's good. Both of you are speaking of intentionality, being intentional about what you're doing, not doing, and following through with that. All right. Well, I know we are at the end of our time together here, but I want to make sure that people can find you guys, connect with you. Obviously, you got your website, skitguys.com. What's the latest on the movie, podcast? How could people follow you on social media, all that kind of stuff? Give them the goods.
I'll do a shameless plug for something. If you've got kids at your house, please join us for bedtime Bible stories. You can find those at skitguys.com/SGTV, like Skit Guys TV.
Mm-hmm. They're
also available on YouTube, IGTV, Facebook, and that's just at Skit Guys is our social media tag.
Yep.
That's something that we started doing. It was an idea Eddie had when, the COVID hit the fan. And everything shut down. And it has been one of the most rewarding ministries we've ever had. It is two guys improving stories 3 nights a week from the Bible. And it is good for kids 3-year-old to 93-year-old. And we've got everybody in between. A lot of fun. So if you're looking for something to do with your kids, something safe to watch that's funny and fun and faith-based, then please join us there.
And there's always an action step. If you're a dad and you're just trying to go, I want to be, if you're looking at 2021 going, what can I do to be one more, just an inch to give more devotional, spiritual time? We're always going to give you an action step you can do with your family that makes you the king and makes you the hero in your house, as far as something to talk about, something to do, something to recreate from a spiritual standpoint.
Yeah, that's so good.
There's two seasons that you can watch anytime you want on skitguys.com/SGTV. We are in the middle right now of doing a kind of a mini season, a Christmas season that's every Sunday night. And then we'll kick off season 3 in, I think, January sometime.
Okay, that's awesome. I love this as an action step. We just talked at the Men's Summit about turning our intention to action, and I love that there's an action step. All right, my brothers. Well, hey, this has been so good. We always end our time with something we just call the final word. 30 seconds of just a final shot of encouragement to guys that are listening. So, Tommy, Eddie, Skit Guys, give us a 30-second final word that we can send our time away with.
Tommy?
Eddie.
Right. Hey, I would encourage each one of you to just be a mentor. Would always say this to me as he put his hand on my shoulder, and as a kid growing up, meeting just a father figure, he would always put his hand on my shoulder and he'd say, "Hey, be gentle on yourself." And I took that to mean, and as I look back on that, to go, I beat myself up a lot. I shoulda, woulda, coulda myself to death. And I would encourage you, no matter how young you are, no matter how old you are, we shoulda, woulda, coulda ourselves to death to where we just beat ourselves up so bad. Be gentle on yourself. Allow the peace of Christ to surround you, to give you peace, and just be gentle on yourself.
That's so good.
Give yourself that break and that grace, because God is.
Oh, I love that.
Good word.
That's a great
Real
word.
Good word.
That is a great word. I think it's a great final word for this. Tommy, Eddie, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a joy when we get to share some space together, whether that's in person or via technology. Can't thank you enough for being on the Giving Life podcast. Blessings on the both of you, your continued ministry, and we'll look forward to seeing you again real soon, I'm sure.
Sounds
Thanks,
great.
Tom.
All right. Bless you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me for my conversation with Tommy and Eddie on today's episode of the Giving Life podcast. For more information on the Skit Guys, be sure to check out skitguys.com. And of course, you can follow them on all the usual social media channels at Skit Guys. Well, that's all for this episode. Until next time, continue striving to be men whose life in Christ gives life to others. We'll see you soon on RESGEN's Giving Life podcast.